Holy shit! We all just watched Godzilla 2014. This is my cousin Boyd, who was the most hyped to see this movie, and I think enjoyed it the most as well. My brother Victor, who you probably already know, and myself. What did you guys think of Godzilla?
It was pretty awesome. It was pretty, I'm trying to think of a nice combination of Godzilla and fantastic.
Godzilla-tastic.
Godzilla-tastic.
Oh god. Yeah, Fatzilla was pretty great. I gave it a 7 out of 10. 7 out of 10? 8.5, I think you said.
Yep.
How big of a Godzilla fan would you consider yourself, Victor?
I watched those movies religiously growing up.
Religiously?
Yeah.
Which
I watched
ones?
them a
Which
lot.
ones do you remember the
Godzilla
most?
vs. Gigan, Godzilla vs. Megalon, Godzilla vs. Destroyer, Godzilla vs. Space Godzilla,
I think you might have watched these more than I did.
Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla.
I know you watched Space Godzilla and Destroyer more than I did. The ones like I was
13.
like really into. Yeah, see, you watched them later. That's why. Because I only ever watched Godzilla when I was like a little ass kid. When I was about 6 or 7, like I had been really into the Lost World and Jurassic Park, and then I got into Godzilla through a friend and watched like all the old, like the really cheesy ones. Like I never saw like the 90s ones. I just saw the cheesy ass ones. The main ones I remember were like Megalon and Godzilla's Revenge, which are kind of considered the two worst
Dude,
like
Godzilla vs. Megalon
movies.
is the best
Yeah,
Godzilla
dude,
movie.
that one is...
And the
is
one,
that the one, that's
the
the one with
Monster
the
Island
Jet
one.
Jaguar, right?
Yes,
Jet
Yeah.
Jaguar!
And the thing is, those two movies are considered awful, but I remember them the best, and I'm pretty sure it's because they were like set in the day, like, and they were just like
Yes.
really
And
lighthearted.
it was about like a
Yeah.
little kid,
movies.
and he had inventions,
Right.
Like-
and it was awesome.
I
Both of
remember,
them.
I remember
Yes.
watching the one with Jet Jaguar,
Uh-huh.
and I was like, "Dude, Jet Jaguar is so cool." This is when I was younger, and then when I saw the movie when I was older, I was just like, "Wow, this suit looks so goddamn cheesy."
And the funny thing is that, you know, I saw the 1998 Godzilla movie, the American
Right.
one, and I saw it in theaters, and I fucking loved that movie as a kid. Like, I did not understand until I was much older that movie is horrible.
Yeah, I think kids growing up like in the '90s, seeing the 98 Godzilla, all loved it,
Right, like.
Yeah.
and then when they got older, they're like, "Wow, that movie."
Well,
was
I
fucking
think
awful.
a lot of people, like people who grew up in the '80s, and like, cause I know Tom, because partly this video is a response to Tommy Oliver's video, which you haven't seen, but we did. And it's 45 minutes of him just completely bitching about the new Godzilla movie, and I think most of his complaints about the movie, A, did not matter to me, and B, were mostly because he's a giant Godzilla fanatic.
Right.
You know? Whereas for me, and I think he said that he never liked the Godzilla 1998 movie. I loved it as a kid because to me it was Godzilla. Like I knew he looked different, but it was still a fucking giant monster destroying New York, and it had a lot of like action scenes in
Yeah.
it, you know.
Yeah.
I mean it was stupid, but I was totally blueballed by the lack of a sequel. Like I never understood why they didn't make a sequel.
right.
And
we were like fucking 8 years old.
I
when that movie
remember,
came out. We didn't
dude,
give
I
a
remember
shit.
being I was 7.
Yeah, I was 5.
So I was infuriated one time when my parents had an Entertainment Weekly magazine and it had like the review section and they'd given Godzilla like a D-. And I was like, this is fucking
Jesus.
bullshit.
The soundtrack too for the Godzilla movie as well.
It's pretty dope.
Yeah,
It
that's
had,
right. We had
Green
it
Day.
too. Oh
Yes.
yeah. It had the fucking Green Day song where they just added in Godzilla roars
Yeah.
randomly, and the P Diddy
The
song.
best soundtrack.
Probably
of all
called
Like,
Puff
time.
Daddy at the time.
Rage was on the Rage Against the
Yeah,
Machine.
Rage Against the
was on-
Machine. There be no shelter here. So anyway, we had that, and I've seen the movie as an adult, or I didn't see the whole thing. I saw like a bit of it as like, or not even adult, a late teenager, and I was like, this is the worst movie I've ever seen in my fucking life. Holy shit. Godzilla 2014 is a very different beast.
Oh yeah.
It's very competently made. I think almost like this might be a case of damning with faint praise, but I think the best thing I can say about Godzilla 2014 is that it's really mechanically sound.
yeah.
Like, there's no big issues with it in terms of, like, the pacing, the acting, the writing. You know, there's some cheesy moments in it. There's a couple of parts, especially, like, the very, very beginning, when they, like, discover the bones and you're not really sure what the hell's going on.
Yeah, I was like, what the, is that, because I was wondering, is that like an old Godzilla bone, like bones or something, or
Right.
or what?
But I thought the movie felt very Spielberg to me.
You know what? That's another thing too.
I felt very Jurassic Park
very,
at the beginning.
yeah, very Jurassic Park
Definitely.
and very like Independence Day as well.
When they
I
they
felt,
showed up in the like
I was
the mine
thinking
area with the fossils and stuff. I was like, this is so Jurassic
Yeah.
Park. It's ridiculous.
Independence Day would be a good comparison. The funny thing is that that's a Roland Emmerich film.
Right.
Who did the first Godzilla movie.
Right.
I was thinking more of Spielberg, more just any of his 80s output, you know, like
Yeah.
like E.T. or something. Like that sort of that magical feeling of
Right.
like, oh, this is it's not really whimsical like a lot of his movies are. It's more like a Spielberg horror film, you know, but that sort of grandness of scope where
Helicopter shots of an island on the
Yeah,
coast.
yeah, dude. That very first shot when they're like flying out like around the island or
So
whatever.
Jurassic Park.
And they
I
showed
like how
the,
he's wearing a Jurassic Park t-shirt. I didn't even notice that.
and it showed like it had like the shot of like the side of the mountain. I was like, oh man, that's very Jurassic Parky.
Definitely.
So yeah, it's a very structurally sound movie, and it's entertaining to say the least. But I don't know. What would you say are your more general thoughts on this film? Like, what is your
General-
overall impression? Or actually, I forgot because we didn't ask you how big of a Godzilla fan are you?
Oh, later on, you know, when I started to get older, I started to get more into it because I remember when I used to come over to y'all's place and you know watch it every now and then. But the one I've probably seen the most is Godzilla versus Destroyer, just because lately,
It's like legitimately good. It's like a
yeah,
good movie.
and I mean, Destroyer's a badass monster too. Huh?
Yeah.
I mean, he's like fucking huge. Looks like
It's fucking cool. It's a cool.
Yeah.
It's a cool fucking movie.
But just you know, kind of getting more into like tokusatsu and stuff like that, kind of made me get more heavily into like Godzilla and you know stuff of that nature.
Right.
So started like watching a little bit more of like the older Godzilla movies and you know, everything like that.
So you'd say that you are a fairly big fan, but maybe not a fanatic of Godzilla.
I would say I'm a pretty big fanatic, yeah. Because I was pretty stoked when they like first announced you know the
Yeah,
new Godzilla.
I know.
movie, yeah.
The thing about Boyd is that he follows film like a lot. Like you follow a lot of film websites and stuff like that, and so he gets really hype over trailers. I cannot count the number of times that you've told me, dude, this trailer gives me chills. Dude, this trailer looks so amazing. And so when the Godzilla trailer started coming out, you were like fucking just jacking off to that shit.
Dude, I remember I was at work when they first released the first trailer for it, and like I was in a car getting ready to like pull out of the service lane where I work at, and I was watching it and everything was just zoned out around me. I was
I
like,
remember that.
oh my
Tell me about
fucking
Like
God.
a fucking Saving Private Ryan
yeah,
moment.
like something like that.
I think what was
man.
disappointing about that specific trailer, the first one, is that was the scene of them jumping down from the helicopter through the clouds.
Yeah,
And that's like, it would be my favorite scene in the whole fucking movie because I think it's gorgeous.
Right.
But the fact that I already saw the entire scene in the first trailer made
kinda-
it like,
I kinda-
man, I wish I hadn't seen this
that
already.
kind of
or it
thing
would've been
doesn't
fucking
bother
awesome.
me. I don't know why.
I kind of liked how I guess I kind of liked how they you know kind of showed like different perspectives, like the perspectives of like you know the people like watching.
I think that scene is fucking great. I love that scene.
You know, I do wonder though if Boyd liked the movie more than we did because we were both spoiled for it all the way through, and you weren't.
Yeah.
Right, like I like movies that I like really want to fucking see. I kind of tend to stay away from.
I should have stayed away from the
Like
the
Pacific
shit.
Rim, I stayed away from.
I was
like,
surprised you watched it. You know.
Like Pacific Rim, I stayed away from like any kind of like reviews. Captain America, the second one,
Right.
I stayed away from any kind of reviews.
So you didn't even know that Bryan Cranston dies in this movie.
No, I had zero. Like that was the one thing I was wondering when they cast like you know.
Right. Because I warned you. I told you Bryan Cranston's not the main character.
Yeah, I was always like wondering what the relationship between the younger guy and Bryan Cranston.
Right.
You know, was, and I was like, oh, that it kind of like surprised me when they were like actually like father son,
Right.
which I thought was pretty cool.
So meanwhile, I was spoiled for everything in this movie because I always spoil myself for everything.
It's
Because I read reviews and watch analysis videos and stuff like that. So I had already seen Tommy Oliver did a 45-minute video where him and his dad just completely railed this movie. They hated it. They thought it was the worst thing ever. And they were the only ones who seemed to feel that way. Like, everywhere on the internet, people have been praising this movie. Jesse Wood, also known as Drowning in Footwear or Drowning in Horseshoes, loves it. there was a review by Your Movie Sucks, which is my favorite reviewer, Adam Johnston, and he thought it was good. He gave it a 7 out of 10, and I pretty much went into it expecting to feel exactly how he did about it. And I did feel exactly how he did about it. What are your favorite things about this movie?
Well, I think the easiest one would be obviously the monsters fighting.
Right. The monster fights were pretty cool. The kills were what sold it.
Yeah, I totally.
The decapitation.
And then
In our theater, when Godzilla decapitates the second, what are they called again?
the Mutos.
The second Muto, when he decapitates it, our whole theater started clapping.
Yeah.
It was fucking awesome.
And also when he did the atomic breath for the first time.
Yeah, there was some claps for that as well.
I was like, dude, when I saw that, I saw his tail just lighting up, I was like, oh my fucking god, like my fucking mouth just dropped.
I gotta say that, like, dramatic build-up is what this movie is all about.
Yeah.
Like, build-up and payoff. It like constantly, scene by scene, there's always some kind of build-up payoff.
I think for the most part, it did a pretty good job as, you know, just like not revealing too, like, when we were watching the Your Movie Sucks review, I thought he said it pretty good that, you know, they did a pretty good job at not showing too much of, like, the monster, you know, Godzilla and everything else.
Which is the funny thing, because, like, yeah, that's where the debate comes in, where I felt like Tommy Oliver went into this movie and he wanted it to be like a classic Godzilla film, and it's not. But the thing is, we all like Godzilla,
right?
but you have to admit those movies are awful.
They're
Like,
really
most
cheesy.
of them are awful.
You wouldn't be able to sell that to an American audience,
No.
and you have to make a compromise.
But
This is the best we could have done with Godzilla.
right.
Like
They took a niche concept and applied it to a broad structure, but they did not do it shittily. Like, I think a lot of people can easily mistake broad for bad, right? And broad, I think, is usually just average. Like, that to me, this movie, the worst thing about it is that it's kind of average. It's not niche, you know. So it's never
Yeah.
going to appeal to me the same way that, like, Pacific Rim does, where Pacific Rim was like, fuck the mainstream, this is gonna
Yeah.
be whatever we want it to be, you know.
pure.
I think that's as big of a, the fact that movie, like, exists is unfathomable.
It is crazy how they were able
That movie
do that,
exists.
and it's almost a $200 million movie.
Right. Like, the existence of
crazy.
Pacific Rim is insane because it is a totally niche film that somehow was able to exist.
Yeah, and it's a big budget movie on top of that.
Godzilla is not a niche film. It's very broad, but it's broad the same way that, again, a Steven Spielberg movie is, where just because it appeals to just about everyone doesn't mean it's bad.
Right.
You know, it's really well put together. It's just solidly done. Almost anyone's gonna enjoy this movie, and you don't have to feel like you're a fucking idiot, like, watching it, you know?
And I definitely think that just with Toho's involvement with the new one, I think, you know, they're definitely trying to put a spark, like, back into Godzilla, kind of do something new with it.
Could be.
You know, and it's, you know, instead of leaving it with, like, you know, Godzilla Final Wars, which, you know, I loved, but
That
it
was
is...
fucking awesome, but it's
It is.
retarded. you know?
It's
It's
yeah.
ridiculous.
It's like,
Absolutely absurd.
It's like, do you really want to leave off Godzilla with a movie like that? No. I mean, no offense to that movie, but
I wish
It's
we had.
fucking awesome, but campy as hell. It knows exactly what it is. It knows
Yeah.
exactly what it's going for.
which, you know, they even said that they were going to wait 10 years to come out with the next Godzilla movie. So, I think this is what they were, you know, kind of building up for.
It has been 10 years.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Do we still want to go on, like, things that we still liked?
Is there anything you want to note about?
Oh, Bryan Cranston.
Right.
Amazing.
He was fantastic in the
Even
film.
the short amount of time that he was in there, with everything else that he's in, fucking amazing.
Right.
And I kind of, I started to tear up when he died. I was like, oh man, fucking Bryan Cranston.
And you're already a big Bryan Cranston fan because
Yeah.
of hand me that Breaking Bad just happens to be sitting in my room.
I know.
Because I plan to watch it, but Boyd's a huge Breaking Bad fan.
Yes,
So.
and a huge Bryan Cranston fan. I remember watching him during when he was on Malcolm in the Middle.
Uh-huh.
And he was always hilarious. And then came to realize that he did voices for, you know, a lot of the Power Ranger monsters.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Wow.
Dude,
And
Bill,
you're a huge
Yeah.
Power Rangers fan too, so.
yeah. It's funny because the Blue Ranger, Billy, his last name's Cranston.
Uh huh.
they named him after Bryan Cranston.
I see.
Wow.
Yeah. So
Wow.
it's like, yeah, tokusatsu full circle kind of shit.
So I wanted to propose an idea that I think this movie has two parts, like definitively.
I would definitely say that.
There's a front part that goes up until the moment Bryan Cranston dies, and then it
Well, it's
becomes
just
a totally different movie.
There's 3 acts to it. It's still a 3-act structure. I mean, there's that
But it's-
up to Bryan Cranston dying, then up to Godzilla getting to the city, and then the
But
third
it-
act starts with him getting out of the helicopter.
But it was
and
almost
then it's-
like-
shit's real from there on.
But it was almost like they were kind of like focusing on Bryan Cranston and the other
Right,
and his son.
Well, I mean, I would say that, like, yeah, it's a 3-act structure, but the first act is so different from the rest of the film.
Well, it's like, after
that
he
it feels
dies,
like-
it's like, boom,
Right.
let's fucking let's like kill these monsters.
And I really felt that, like, this is the thought that I had in, like, response to Tommy Oliver's video, because he was saying that it didn't feel like a Godzilla movie. It felt like the adventure of Navy Guy, right? And I was like, that completely misses the point, because the whole purpose for his character was to give us a ground view of what's happening with Godzilla. You know, it was like, let's create a character who has a really good reason to be at every scene that Godzilla's gonna be at. Because there's no one else who would be there, but he always had a good reason. That's my favorite thing that Your Movie Sucks review points out, is that because he was a Navy guy, because his dad was the one who, you know, who figured all this shit out, he had probable cause to be at every scene involving Godzilla, you know, and because he was a bomb detonator.
Yeah.
So he always had a good reason to be there. And it felt natural, even though when you think about it, it seems really convenient. But
Right.
it felt natural in the movie. And that was the point. He was our cipher to watch this all unfold.
Well, I mean, just think. I mean, if there was really no character like that, it would just kind of be like.
You'd just be watching him, like, shit happening.
That's
It'd be
what
a
I'm
sound
saying. It
and
would
light
just,
show.
yeah.
Which is
Really
funny because
cared.
Tom on Twitter was like, "Oh, you'll probably love the movie because it's a visual feast because he thinks all I care about is like sound and light show stuff."
Uh-huh.
And I'm like, to me, yeah, it's a good looking movie and stuff, and it has cool moments. But the human aspect is what makes it work. It's a lot like the Raid Redemption in this regard,
Yeah.
except with a much longer first act, where Film Crit Hulk always says how what makes the Raid Redemption work is that it starts off by just very slimly giving you enough character to understand why everyone's there, right?
Right.
Like, the main character, you get that he's got a pregnant wife at home that he needs to get back to, that he's honor bound to do this job, that he just needs to get in and get out, you know, and that he's really fucking powerful. You learn all that in, like, the first 15 minutes, and the rest of the movie is pure action, but because you understand this character, he can take you through this action film. That's what Godzilla does. It gives us a character who we completely understand all of the reasons he's doing the things he's doing. You know, we get that his parents have both been killed by these monsters.
Yeah.
You know, like when he blows up the babies, like it's almost like a revenge act.
Yeah.
You know, he clearly was like, no, fuck this. These things need to die. These things have taken my parents away.
Right.
You know, and the fact that he does that with complete subtlety and does not actually spell that out,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
we understand it because we saw his backstory. That's good writing, you know? And so we get what happened with his parents. We get that he has a kid at home he needs to get back to and a wife that he loves, and he doesn't want to end up like his parents. He doesn't want to be the dad who got killed by the nuclear, you know,
Right.
the nuclear animals and stuff. So, like, thematically, his purpose is very strong. But after that first act, we already understand everything we need to know about him, and then he just becomes a vehicle to get us through the plot. You know, like, we care enough about him that we're not like, why are we following this guy?
Right,
like,
right.
why him of all people? No. Like, why no one else is better to follow than him? And it's not because he's the chosen one. It's not because of destiny.
Yeah.
It's because he just was a
Or
good,
he's a
like,
superhero.
in the right place to be this character, you know? And that's rare in filmmaking today. That is something to be celebrated.
Right.
That the character has an actually good reason, a good human reason for us to follow and care about him, even though his real purpose is to just show us what the monsters are doing.
It was like,
you know?
it was just kind of like organic. you know.
Yes, very organic.
It didn't feel like forced or
It
anything
was
like
very
that.
different from Transformers.
Right. That is
I have to say-
so hard to do. That just
The best part of the action scenes in this movie is that they aren't like Transformers, where it's not action for the sake of action that has absolutely no meaning to anything, and you're just watching.
Right. See, that's the thing. Like, I'm not a big fan of action scenes in movies. I've come to realize over time, right?
They're
Like,
boring.
right, action scenes are not exciting unless there's stakes to it, right? Or if it's something that you like personally wanted to happen. Like in the Avengers, the coolest fight scenes are the ones between the heroes, right? Because it's like Hulk versus Thor had like this cultural baggage to it, you know, or like all the other fights that were like that. But then when you get to the final battle, like it's cool and all because it's well choreographed, but it's
So
exhausting.
long, and you lose track
It's
of what's
just
going
exhausting.
on. It's just things flying
And
everywhere.
in Godzilla, like each
you
action
can always
scene,
tell what's happening. It's always very just like Godzilla moves and he fights a dude.
And each one had like it was a part of the steps of this process of what the military is trying to set up. You know, like the first time they attack, we realize, okay, well, the EMP field is gonna make it so we can't do shit. So then the second time, it's like, all right, we need to hit them with nukes. But oh, they're also sneaky, you know, crazy creatures that we can't really do anything against.
And they're addicted to, or they're, you know, they get drawn to the radiation and all
Right.
that too. So
They kept eating the bomb, but then what I didn't get is how the warhead kept surviving after it kept eating like the bomb part.
because they're
like,
remote detonated. So
But how
they
come it
couldn't-
didn't just eat the bomb?
What do you mean?
Because it kept going up and like biting the bomb, but then it didn't eat the head of the bomb, and it did that like
I
twice.
thought they just swallowed the bomb.
that's what I thought.
no,
too.
because
The first
like,
time he
they-
swallows
he goes
it, the
and
second
eats
time
the
she
bomb,
takes it to
and then
the...
they find the bomb washed up on the shore, and they pick it up in a helicopter, and then they're bringing it in again, and then it
Did
ends
they?
up in like the nest, and it didn't need a bomb.
I didn't think
they
I
need
didn't
a bomb.
realize that.
Yeah, the bomb like moves to different because that's why he had to go into the nest. They
I
went
thought
into
it was
the nest to
different
get the
bombs.
bomb so that the bomb didn't
Well,
detonate
right,
and
at
destroy
that,
everything.
at that part, the reason they didn't eat the bomb was because it was for the nest.
I was-
like, it was.
I only
feeding the
ever remember
babies.
them showing one specific bomb.
I remember the
like,
first, like, I remember there being two bombs. There was
Maybe
the one
there
that
were
was
two
on.
bombs. Maybe I missed that.
There was one that the thing ate and just swallowed it, and then
Yeah.
they brought in the one that on the train, and then it took it and buried it underground or whatever, right?
yeah,
Yeah, that's what.
What
I
was the
remember.
one that washed up on the beach then?
What? I don't remember.
When he washes up and he's got like shit all over his face, and he gets up and there's a helicopter and they're picking up a bomb,
Oh,
and then they
yeah.
get him and they put him on that like a medical thing. I don't know.
I don't.
And I was
know
like,
either.
why didn't it eat the whole bomb? It only ate like half the bomb. And I remember ripping the bomb like in half and eating half the bomb.
Maybe there was two bombs.
I don't get it. I'd have to like.
I think there
watch it
were
again.
two bombs on the train, right?
I'm pretty sure there were.
I remember seeing two bombs on the train, so maybe that's
Comments,
what
comments, please.
Right.
Yeah, for
it is.
real.
If you've seen this movie and you have better memory than we do, then leave a comment. Anything that bothered you about this movie? I have one nitpick, and this is a total nitpick, but it really did bother me. And I told you guys about this in the car. That there's a scene where the main character, Brody, calls his wife at home, and he's trying to like convey a message about like, you know, I'm gonna be like at a layover in Hawaii. Yeah, he says I'm going to Honolulu, and I'm gonna take the flight back to America, and like, you know, my dad's dead and all this shit. And she doesn't answer because her phone is over on a desk, and it's set to vibrate.
So
And like, I'm sitting here thinking, you know, if I'm like, okay, you've both had girlfriends, right?
yeah,
When you're in a relationship, do you not keep your phone on you far more often than
Yeah,
usual? Because
yeah.
you're like waiting for texts, especially if you think something important is happening.
yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
Especially
she
like
wasn't.
the possibility
really-
of your husband being dead.
Yeah,
Right.
there was like earthquakes
It
and shit.
showed
She didn't
her-
seem concerned.
Like,
Yeah.
it showed her like
was
on the
fucking
like, you know,
around.
sitting on the phone at one point, like, oh my god, where is he? Why isn't he calling? But then she doesn't watch the news. She to, you know, see what's going
Like,
on.
how in the hell
doesn't
could
keep
you
her
not
phone
notice
on.
the news when there's two fucking monsters fighting on screen?
And you know, you could make the excuse in that scene because she was giving her son a bath or whatever. You could make the excuse that, well, you know, she had to get to the phone a little bit later. You know, it was over there once
She would've had
she
it in
didn't
the
have it on her.
bathroom.
But first she would have had it in the bathroom. But even if she had forgotten it, the amount of time that passes between when Brody calls her and when the EMP happens while he's on the train had to have been several hours. Like,
Yeah.
it goes from dusk to night in this time span.
She could have checked.
And
the
she
voicemail.
never checked the voicemail and called him back. Like, I was sitting there like, this baffled me. Like, that was the stupidest thing in the whole movie to me. Nothing else bothered me nearly as much as that. And I couldn't believe that Your Movie Sucks didn't point that out, because that's the kind of shit that you saw his nitpicks.
Right.
You know, his were even smaller than that. But I was just like, you can't be serious. But other than that, I don't think like I said, this movie is very broad, so it didn't appeal to me in any like big personal fashion, you know?
Right.
Like, even if it had been about like giant monsters fighting, I'm not such a giant monsters fighting guy that it would have automatically been 10 out of 10, you know,
Right.
because it's a good Godzilla fight or whatever. You know, I thought it was a cool little fun movie. And okay, let's talk about the themes of this film, because there are themes, but they're like not done with. Like, nothing happens with
Right.
the themes.
It almost felt like the whole like nuclear thing in Japan.
Yeah, that was I think the coolest, that's the coolest part of the theme.
Yeah.
Because the original Godzilla film was made like to comment on the nuclear bombs that had been dropped
Yeah.
on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and those get mentioned in this film as well. But more importantly, this film is about nuclear reactors melting down in Japan, which is, you know, it's obviously meant to parallel the Tohoku earthquake
Yeah.
that happened 2 years ago. And the thing is, like, that's not as big of like a part of the public consciousness here in the West, but that is a ridiculously huge tragedy that has
Dude.
just happened in Japan. Like, people, that is still very much affecting the lives of people. There is almost one of the biggest disasters that's ever happened, like one of the biggest human disasters.
Right.
You know,
That's all. I was like, damn, is that like too soon to do something like that?
I don't think there's an anime series right now that's about like the main characters are all from Tohoku, and like their lives have been affected by the
Okay.
earthquake. Like, it's not about the earthquake, but that's like a strong theme running under
Right.
it. But you know, like, I think it's important to comment on things like that. But then the movie doesn't really comment on it.
Right.
It happens, it's there. It's, you know, it's a symbol of, again, mankind trying to own nature, and you can't own nature, you know.
Right.
So these mutos are like symbolic of the earthquakes that caused the reactor meltdown,
Yeah.
you know, and mankind's hubris to think that we could control nature. But then what does Godzilla represent in this analogy?
It's supposed to be like the
he's-
balance of restoring
he's like-
Yeah,
balance.
I mean,
right,
yeah,
like,
like what a
Nature's
he's-
restoration of balance. But what's the real world parallel to that? I mean, I
My
guess
understanding
nature
is that it's
balances
like-
itself.
Maybe
but-
there's some kind of like, you know, nature rules all kind of thing. I don't
Seems
know.
like the balance to me would be that humanity is taking over this nuclear power, which we shouldn't have, and so the Mutos are coming out and eating that and taking away our power, so they would be restoring balance, whereas Godzilla comes and defeats them and would allow us to continue to make nuclear weapons. So it doesn't seem like Godzilla's restoring balance to me.
Well,
It's weird. I don't know. Like, I feel like there was something they were going for here, but they weren't that concerned about making it like poignant or making it work.
I just don't think they really wanted to go like too like deep into
Yeah.
like, you know,
It's a popcorn movie. They didn't want to make
Yeah.
it preachy. If you want to see a movie that does the same concept with giant monsters, not a movie but a TV show, watch the anime series Earth Maiden Arjuna. That is literally a very preachy show about the Earth like trying to cleanse itself from human waste.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's
and-
just like a movie like, I mean, they, you know, like you said, they touched on like certain things like, you know, lightly,
Right.
but you know, I don't think you want to like go to something like this like with like this overbearing message. Of,
But that's what the original Godzilla was, though.
yeah,
Like it's also a totally different thing. Where obviously the original Godzilla, like, you can't expect this movie to be like the original Godzilla, because the original was like a artistic film with a vision.
yeah.
But Godzilla is not art, it's pop now. It is pop culture, you know.
It's like-
Expecting an artistic Godzilla movie it just doesn't fit in with the pop culture nature of Godzilla. They could make one now that they have this pop culture Godzilla movie.
Well, yeah.
But they won't.
No.
You know, it will not happen.
It'll kind of. I kind of feel like it'll just kind of continue in the same trend as like all of the other Godzilla movies have. Like,
and honestly, I think part of it is also that like there's an element of who would we like? Why would we be commenting on that? You know, like Godzilla was made by the Japanese about something that happened, you know, in Japan.
And,
So for us to take their iconography and then try to tell a message about something that happened in Japan,
it just wouldn't feel right.
Would come off as somewhat inauthentic.
Yeah.
Whereas if this same film was made in Japan and was like more definitively about the Tohoku situation, then it would probably be way more poignant and deep and shit. But this is the American pop culture Godzilla, so I guess we should just be happy that themes even exist in this film.
Yeah,
you know.
I mean, there's some little deepness in there.
Yeah.
Very light, but I mean, it's better than not having just having it be just a really
it's
flat.
It's cool that it comes from somewhere.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't feel like this movie's out of nowhere making shit up. It's grounded in some. To me, the most like the idea behind this film was, what if Godzilla was like real? You know, like what if this is the most realistic depiction I can think of.
Yeah.
Of how we would respond to Godzilla, and it does that by not taking it on too big of a scale. Like we don't really see like the president getting phoned in,
Thank God.
you know, or the mayor or something. It's like just the Navy responding to this thing, you know, and we only see it from Brody point of view. We never see like the broad strokes. We do get the one general guy who you know, he does the nukes.
Right.
And, you know, we have enough characters who know what's going on to keep us knowing what's going on, but we don't see, like, the whole fucking world reaction to this. It's mostly about the immediate situation with Brody as the Cypher.
I mean, even though it is kind of like a big scale movie, it's kind of small in like the sense, you know, like, you know, not a bunch of, not like, you know, like you said, the president doesn't get involved. And, you know, it's just kind of like within like a certain region.
A narrow focus.
Yeah.
It takes place in a sort of straight line where it goes from like
it kind of does
from the Philippines to Japan to Honolulu to California.
It's kind of like, you know, the route is like mapped out.
And it's definitely cool that it actually takes place in Japan for a large part of it. You know, that it's still very grounded in Japan as a concept.
It's almost kind of like it was recognizing where, you know,
right.
Yeah, the Godzilla came from.
It felt like it didn't just feel like Americans appropriating Godzilla. It felt like this is an American Godzilla film. It's still about a creature from Japan. It's just that this one has an American main character. And Godzilla he had a good reason to follow them to America because we had captured the other Muto and put it in Nevada. So there's a perfectly logical reason for this creature to go to that creature, you know. Why the fuck was Godzilla in Manhattan in 98?
Yeah. How the hell did he get there?
And why?
Yeah.
I think there was a reason, but it was stupid.
Probably.
This film, the like I said, the best thing I could say about this film is that it's mechanically very sound. Like all the reasoning behind stuff sounds right.
It
you
makes
always
sense.
buy into it. You're never like, really? That's why?
Yeah.
It's always like, oh yeah, okay. Yeah, I can see that, you know. Well, I guess if giant monsters appeared, it would pretty much be like this, you know. It all happens in a very short span of time, other than the beginning of the film, it all takes place over like 3 days.
Yeah, everything felt very, even though it was like a 2.5 hour long movie, everything.
I don't think it was 2.5. I think it was like 2 hours.
I mean, regardless, everything
felt short. Yeah.
Everything moved really quick. I felt
it kept a good suspenseful pace. Like I said, the film is a lot of build up and payoffs. Sometimes it did feel a little excessive, where it was like, how many scenes are we gonna have of long shot silence?
Yeah.
Slowly building. You know, like almost jump scare moments and stuff. And
the duck hitting the bus window.
Yeah.
I was like, okay.
That was a weird dissolution of tension.
Yeah.
But other than that, I mean, it's very competently made. There's some cool monster fights. Again, like we've all said, I don't mind that it was kept to a minimum because what was there was good.
Because if you did more monster fights, then everything that happened in the end would just be pointless.
Right.
It would just like, okay, can this just be over now? But it actually meant something. Like, hey, you could, it felt good.
I think, and I'm sure you guys are going to agree with me, that the only scene that I would probably cut would be the whole train scene, just because it's kind of pointless. But at the same time, it was obviously there to give us an excuse to have the monsters in another context.
Right.
Like to show more monster.
And it shows the whole... It's got the eggs in its
Right,
belly.
and that was cool looking. Like, the way the lighting was in that scene.
I thought the scene with the kid on the bus crossing the bridge was kind of pointless, too. Where Godzilla
Right.
comes out and
But
it's like
that's
they
the
shoot at
thing.
him and
Like,
then he
the
goes
funny
away
thing
and
is
nothing
that-
really happened.
That, like, the only scenes that felt pointless and, like they could have been taken out were scenes that were obviously put in there to have more monster.
I know.
You know? So it's almost like we're saying, oh, the film would have been better with even less monster.
like
Because it had monster, but they didn't do anything at those parts. It was just
And also,
like,
I kind of felt also that
around.
this Godzilla kind of had a little bit of personality to him.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
that's another thing to mention. The Muto were unexpectedly interesting because of the scene where they meet.
Yeah.
You know, like when they sort of like
their
they
little kiss thing.
right they clearly
like,
are
"Aw."
like they have like a mating sort of ritual moment where
And that was
they feel
'cause-
tender together, and then she goes to lay her eggs, and like they had a perfectly logical reason for everything they were doing. One of them wanted to breed, the other one was trying to to help her breed.
Right.
And they were just fucking up everything in their path. They were gathering all this energy for the purpose of breeding, which is what the other Godzilla movie was about also, but this one just did it better,
Right.
by not being a stupid, shitty movie.
Yeah, having Godzilla be like asexual.
Right.
And, yeah.
And it's not Godzilla having the fucking babies.
Right.
It's the other creatures.
Yes.
And, the creatures were pretty cool. I mean, you said yourself they felt like, a decent Godzilla monster.
Yeah.
And I
way
thought
they
they had
moved,
personality and
the way
were
they
interesting.
were.
So, I feel like they're a worthy addition to the Godzilla
That-
roster.
And that was the thing I was worried about. I was like, just like having the monsters just kind of be like some kind of like throwaway monster
Right.
you didn't really care about. But, like you said, they had a little bit of like life to them. They had like personality and everything.
To me,
Just the
one
way
of
they-
the
their
most
interaction with
emotionally
everything.
one of the most emotionally resonant moments in the film is when the mother monster hears the explosion and goes to look
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
realizes that all her
It looks
babies are
sad.
dead, and she personally is about to kill Brody.
Yeah.
And that was like, oh, this is actually like, this is not a black and white conflict. There's these creatures are trying to live. So that was a great heartfelt moment. And then Godzilla, like you said, Godzilla in this movie is literally a superhero. Like, he's not evil at all. He doesn't kill anyone on purpose, like
Even though
he probably doesn't kill anyone in
No,
this movie.
because
No.
he comes in and brings that flood with him, and
Well,
that's
that's true.
That was probably
Thousands
the,
of
that was
people.
probably the
I was like,
Alright.
holy shit, he just wasted
The
this
flood,
out.
the flood did, but that was like, I mean, it couldn't be helped. He had to fight the
Inadvertent.
monsters.
Yeah.
It
you
was
know?
another part that was like, well, he just
did-
murdered like 50
He
billion
did flood the
people for
town
no
and kill a
fucking
lot of
reason.
people, but he never outright kills people.
yeah.
you
It's
know?
not like
He does most of his fighting in an already abandoned city. He just kind of chills with the boats at the part where he's
Yeah.
with the boats.
That's
He
not- I thought that part was
even
kinda-
when they're fucking shooting him at the bridge. He only I think he wrecks a couple military things, but for the most part he was just like, stop shooting me and trying to
Yeah.
do shit.
I mean,
Like,
I mean, what's Ken Watanabe? Is it Watanabe or Watanabe?
Watanabe.
Watanabe. Yeah, even he just like what he was saying. It was like he's a predator. He's going after his prey.
Right.
That's what his focus was.
Victor, can you give me your best Ken Watanabe face? That's pretty good. That was Ken Watanabe's face throughout the entire film. He is the Asian Jon Snow. He just looks really concerned all the time. That was his whole role in this movie, was to look concerned.
He was. You know what? Even though I'd said that he's kind of like the Japanese version of Clint Eastwood. I felt like in this movie he was like the Japanese version of Dr. Grant in a sense.
I guess. He has even less he has maybe 10 lines of dialogue.
He was nothing.
In this film.
Completely
All he does
pointless.
is stand
He
there
does
and make
nothing
faces
in the entire movie.
and like come up with.
Godzilla is the balance of nature.
He did have a great line though with the Hiroshima thing, where he shows the
that was
guy
cool.
the pocket watch, and he's like, this is the time that stopped in Hiroshima. It belonged to my father.
That
It's
was
like,
impactful.
yeah, it was like
Saying it to this, gung ho American dude
Trying
who was
to
ready
nuke
to
shit.
fucking nuke shit. Exactly.
Like trying
And
to
he's
like,
dude, don't nuke shit.
like trying to persuade him to
And it would have been real easy once again to make the military guy a fucking cartoon character, but
Yeah.
all
They
the
were
military
pretty
stuff
good.
felt very legit.
Yeah.
It did.
And they actually they actually worked with the Navy to make this film. They made sure everything was super legit. Nothing ever felt stupid. You don't understand how hard that is to make a movie like this not stupid. That is really difficult to have human characters who have a real reason to be there. Everyone has a real reason to be wherever they are. Nothing felt contrived. Nothing felt stupid and needless. Everyone felt exactly how you would expect them to be in the situation.
Well, I think people are becoming a little bit more aware, this isn't how things work. There is this is there's a real fundamental process to how these kind of things work, and especially in movies, because movies like to they like to blur that line. They like to just say oh, this is how it is, just
make it retarded.
But
Written
I think
by someone who has no idea what
exactly
the hell it's actually about.
They can just fictionalize everything, but I think people are kind of wanting that kind of realism in movies.
Especially I was thinking, 'cause we live in Norfolk, Virginia Beach. This is a Navy town, and I was like, our locals here are gonna fucking love this movie because it's about a Navy guy with a nurse wife, and that is everyone in our city.
Oh god, that's
is
true.
a Navy guy with a nurse wife.
This movie will be horribly
this is
relatable.
incredibly relatable.
And I mean,
to everyone.
and that's another thing too.
Very
Is just
American pride.
they were a young couple with a kid,
Right?
and that's kind of something that's natural nowadays. Young 20-somethings.
Young couple with a kid, guys in the military, and the wife's a nurse. It was perfect.
It's like everything about this movie was really real and organic. I felt, and everything kind of came naturally,
which is just great mechanically sound disaster film, and I would call it a disaster film, and I think that can be true of a lot of monster movies.
Yeah,
but
giant monster movies, most definitely.
Overall, once again, it's not even though I can say it's so mechanically sound and I'm mostly singing praise for it, it's not again, it's not impressive to me on a personal level. The themes are not really deep. The characters are Bryan Cranston's character is definitely memorable.
Yeah.
Brody, like I said, he's mostly a cipher for the action. He's there for us to have a good reason to be everywhere and to just not be obnoxious. He's not a character that makes you go, "Oh, why are they showing Brody again?" But he's not super memorable. He's not, "Oh, yeah, I loved Brody," He's there for to show us Godzilla from a human perspective. And it's not a film it's not like Pacific Rim where I'm walking out going, my whole reality is shattered by this movie's existence. And even then, I was not a huge fan of Pacific Rim. I would give that movie probably an 8 out of 10 to Godzilla's 7. That just because that film had more energy and more ideas in it.
I gotta say with Godzilla, I'm just... Because in the very basis, it's completely unnecessary to have a fucking Godzilla movie in the first place, but I am very satisfied with what they did with it, because it could have been so much worse.
Has it been?
It has been
so much worse. And every other fucking, Transformers, probably Ninja Turtles when that comes out, are these horrible,
is
stupid
that not
movies.
Out yet?
No.
I keep thinking it's out because
And it's this is so much better than that.
The trailers...
It's not one of those.
The trailers for Ninja Turtles are so bad that it hurts my brain to think about how they're making it.
I'm highly skeptical of that movie.
That's an
more,
understatement.
The more I watch the trailer, the more skeptical I get.
I was skeptical from the moment they said they were making another Ninja Turtles movie, because it can't be done.
I mean, I had some hope when they started to say hey, yeah, we're gonna not make them aliens anymore. I was like, okay,
that's a very
that's a good start.
That's called taking it from 0 to 1.
Yeah, I was like, that's a good start.
But anyway, does anyone else have any more comments about Godzilla? We've run approximately as long as Tom's video, so we've made a good counterpoint.
I really respect. There's one scene where they're in a boat talking to the army dudes, and it almost looked like it was going to be really blue and yellow, and then it was just blue. And I was like, that is amazing.
Yeah.
They did it. They didn't make the film blue and fucking orange.
I'm glad for
It
that.
was
The film is
gorgeous.
mostly gray. The thing is, when we see, because we watched this on like a huge ass screen,
Right.
at Lynnhaven Theater. When we see this on RTV,
I
if
thought
it's
the cinematography was
it's
great.
probably
I
gonna
thought
look more blue
The
and
visual
orange.
Yeah.
choices were great.
Um,
No, because I paid lots of attention to the camera work and the colors and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, but it's still a drably colored movie. I wouldn't call it colorful or anything.
Yeah, but I mean, they didn't make it obnoxious.
Right.
It didn't look
It's
annoying.
not overly color coded or anything, but at the same like these days I'm really like I'm got a big heart on for colorful movies, you know, which is another part of why I like Pacific Rim is because it's so colorful, you know.
Right.
That fits.
Even though
with
people
Pacific Rim.
complain
It
that
wouldn't
it's
fit for
always
this.
dark all the time. I hear people complain like, "Oh man, that movie was so dark." I'm just like, "What are you talking about?"
What about Pacific Rim?
Yeah. I'm just like, what about when they're in the
It's a super
city?
colorful movie.
What are you talking about when they're in the city?
Look at the robots. They're all
Yeah.
fucking painted
It's just,
and
I
stuff.
mean, it's still at night. It's just.
But still,
What?
like,
Ever.
colorful, though, but-
what about like when they're in the city and like all of like the lights are just illuminating, you know, the
That's
robots
what-
and the
that's
monsters.
one of the
really
most-
fucking awesome.
That's
looking.
what, yeah.
That's
one of the
fucking
most
coolest
colorful
scene.
Hollywood films like
Yeah.
in a long time. I've got said all I can about Godzilla. I think
Monsters, like just like the designs of the Mutos. I mean, I thought, like I was talking with a guy at work.
They were creepy
And-
looking, and I like that.
Yeah.
They were definitely fucking creepy.
And he was just like saying, he was like talking about like Rodan.
Uh-huh.
And I was just like, what if this would be like this Godzilla's version of like Rodan?
that's what I thought when I first saw the trailer,
trailer
that
made it
showed
look
him.
like that.
Yeah.
And I think, and honestly, kind of cooler than Rodan. Rodan was just a pterodactyl.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
when I like seeing him in like, you know, the other Godzilla movies, I'm just like, Rodan.
He's one of the weaker Godzilla
Yeah.
monsters, really. In
And
terms
they're
of
And the
also
way-
horny anyway, so it's like.
And the way he moves in the movies, it's oh my god, it's so cheesy.
you can see the wires a lot of the time.
Not even like that, but just like his movements. I'm
Yeah.
just like they're just like so corny. Just because like you know they have you can obviously tell when like they have a guy in a suit, and then when he's like there's just like using like a mold or something like that.
So if they were to make a sequel to this, and they decided to bring in one of the original monsters, any of them, who would you want to see in the next film?
Oh man, it would either be Mechagodzilla or King Ghidorah.
Vic?
I could totally see Mechagodzilla being in a second one.
I
I don't know
I
what
don't know
context you
why.
would give that. Like, Mechagodzilla's a fucking stretch of an idea.
True.
I'd like to see, like.
I could see King Ghidorah because he's like the king of space or whatever.
Yeah,
I could see
that would be
Space
ridiculous,
Godzilla
but-
just to have like, cause like where would the next conflict come from? Why not space?
Right.
Or what was Destroya's backstory?
Destroyer was built from the oxygen destroyer that
Yeah.
had killed the first Godzilla and
Yeah.
like whatever thing. So he, within the context of Godzilla verse, he wouldn't be able to be in the next one, but it would be an awesome monster to have.
Or
in the
like
next one.
like something like Hedorah or like Biollante would be cool.
Biollante would probably work.
Because it would kind of fit in
Yeah.
again with like the whole like
Pollution and
My
yeah.
favorite's always been Gigon, but
Here's
that
what
would be
they should do.
absurd.
If they make another Godzilla movie, this one has to be about global warming. Like whereas the last one, because we just had the Tohoku earthquake happen and it had the nuclear fallout, and so that's a big topical thing. Now we have the Antarctic shelf is finally melting. Have you heard about that?
No.
It happened. Like a huge chunk of Antarctica just fucking broke off.
I see.
Like a chunk the size of Manhattan broke off of
Jesus
Antarctica.
Christ.
And they were like, this, like they said, it is now beyond repair. Like we cannot do anything about global warming anymore. It is now done. The Earth is going to flood. Like basically in the next 100 years, the sea level will rise about 10 feet, and then like it'll start accelerating after that. And within like a couple hundred years, then like every coastal area will pretty much be gone.
Right.
So we've already destroyed the world through global warming. It has happened now. So I think if they could come up with some kind of creature to represent that,
That'd be cool.
it would be an interesting
Yeah,
Godzilla
definitely.
monster.
I'd rather them do new monsters than like
I mean, I think I would
fail
it
at
would
doing old monsters.
It would
Right,
still be cool.
I just
think.
want them to be something that's relevant. Like, you know.
Like maybe they could put Mothra in there, like on Godzilla's side or something.
They could just throw Mothra in.
'Cause, I mean, there's always been that, like, you know, each of the movies, like, in this movie he's the villain, in this movie he's the hero, and
Right.
like kind of go back and forth with it. So I mean, I could see him totally being like a villain or something in the next movie, if
That'd
they
be
were to
interesting.
ever do one.
That would, like, what if, like, mankind does something so terrible to the Earth that Godzilla is like, you people need to go. And just
Right.
fucking wipes out all of humanity.
That's the cool one with like Godzilla versus Destroyer is that he's a good guy and a bad guy.
Yeah.
Like they're fighting Godzilla and Destroyer.
But he's also like on the verge of like melting down.
Yeah,
So they're trying to
right.
like, you know, have him not do
There's
that.
a lot of shit going on in
I
that
know.
movie.
It's like they want to kill Destroyer, but they also don't want fucking Godzilla like, you know,
Yeah.
blowing up and, you know,
Alright, any more notes about this Godzilla movie?
Nah.
any
We'll
more
just end up talking about other shit.
notes.
We done? Anything that's nagging at your mind? Performances, moments, scenes? Anything you want to mention? We did mention the decapitation already, so...
It was hard for me
Yeah.
to take the main character seriously because I know he's kick-ass.
Yeah,
and I
he
think
is.
that's hilarious.
Aaron Taylor Johnson.
Because-
So
I
is
think
he
it's
the-
hilarious that in
So
this
he's the
movie-
character Kick-Ass?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what they
That's-
said in they said that in
Yeah.
Tom's podcast, and I was like, but I remember Kick-Ass being a shrimpy guy.
But you never saw Kick-Ass 2.
No, I didn't.
Because
And
that's
this
the
dude
thing
is
in
fucking
Kick-Ass 2.
enormous.
Is that in Kick-Ass 2, he gets super fucking jacked, and it's like this kind of ironic thing where it's like, holy fuck, this guy got humongous. And then it's like in this, he doesn't have the glasses, and his head is shaved, and he just looks like some generic like jockey military guy. And I'm like,
Well, I mean, every guy in the military looks, you know,
I know, but it's
generic.
funny.
But
that
what
he
a
completely
turnaround.
didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah. And now he's just kind of like interchangeable main character guy, whereas before he had like sort of this personality as the nerdy guy. It's like, wow.
I mean, you know, I don't know if I'm going on a limb.
I didn't think he
saying
did a good job, but he's just kind of like generic to me now. It's like he
Right.
could have
But
been,
like-
anyone could have played that.
But like
dude.
he said, he's in the Navy. Like, the point is that,
Yeah.
I mean, the whole point of the military is that they make you generic. You're supposed to
Yeah.
be just a foot soldier.
Yeah.
That's a fun idea.
Like, you don't... That's what they're... That's how it is. That's how the military is.
I know.
You're supposed to just be
But now it's
unidentifiable.
interesting that you added that to my
Right.
conversation about how he became unidentifiable.
I don't know. I kind of think like, you know, since this movie has come out, and I guess you know, computer animation has been introduced into the Godzilla canon.
Right.
That maybe this is something that Toho kind of wants to continue with, considering these, you know, if you know it is making the
If
money
it's as
that
successful as people are saying it is.
yeah,
I think
that's
it would
what I'm
be
saying.
exciting for them to see like the apex of what fucking Godzilla could be in terms of like visuals
Well,
of having like this CG fucking gigantic Godzilla doing shit.
Sumo
Like,
wrestler.
I think it's
Godzilla.
just you
It's
know it's
interesting.
just a sign of the times, you know, just because you know that the whole special effects thing, you know,
and having the
man-
budget to go as far as
It's
they want.
let's put it this way. It's not like when they made the original Godzilla, they made it out of toys because they were nostalgic for it.
Yeah.
That was the technology. You know,
and it was always about, it was a special effects film. It's about
right.
new effects.
There's always
going
going to be people who are like, "Oh,
shit like
Godzilla
that.
shouldn't be CG," but it's like, if they had CG in 1954, they
Yeah,
would
they
have
would've
made a
used it.
CG
Well,
Godzilla.
they would've
Well,
fucking
that's what I'm saying. It
drawn
kind
on
of
the
feeds into
fire
that,
blasts and shit.
into the thought like, what if we did a Godzilla movie with CG instead
Right.
of the practical effects and everything? So,
I'll leave you with this parting thought, a quote from my friend Michael Rubio, and we followed through on his quote as well. On Facebook, someone was asking him, "Is Godzilla really?" He said, "I loved Fatzilla. Fucking God Fat Ass was badass." Someone was like, "Is he really as fat as they say? It's not just thunder thighs?" And he was like, "No, man, it's full sumo wrestler." The guy said, "So does he look cool?" And Mike said, "I'm still in the afterglow from the theater, but goddamn, he was so cool and fat, I'm going straight to McDonald's." And so that's what we did. We went straight to McDonald's after this movie to be like Fatzilla.
What really actually sells the fatness is that he kind of jiggles. Like, there's parts where Godzilla jiggles.
I mean, that's
and
a
I was
big-
like, he wouldn't have seemed fat if he didn't really
that's a
jiggle
big
like
ass
that.
monster, though. I, mean,
I know.
There's,
It's awesome. I love the design.
Hey, he's
but he
supposed to be,
jiggles.
he's supposed to be a whale. His name is Gojira.
Yes.
He's a whale.
It felt appropriate.
Wow, that dude, his tail was long as fuck too. Huh?
Yeah.
I don't. I mean, I don't remember it being that long, but his tail was long
Hey,
as fuck.
okay,
man.
we're done. That's it. That's Godzilla Cast.
It was awesome.
Woo!